Thank you for joining this webinar on We Want You, reviewing annual sessions and exhibition program submissions. We are delighted that you joined our ADEA proposal review team this year. Each year, we receive many proposals for various conference programs. So our proposal review team is an important team, and your contributions to the success of this year's conference is very dependent on your efforts in assessing conference proposals. Today's speakers includes myself. I'm Dieter Schönwetter from way up north in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Dr. Robert Spears from Houston, Texas, way down south. You can see our disclosure slide here. As this webinar has been pre-recorded, we ask you to please take the liberty to pause the presentation for each of the mini calibration exercises. We invite you to fully participate so that you may be well calibrated to assess the ADEA conference proposals with the rest of the team members. So here's your first mini calibration assignment. We want you to do a cold assessment of this proposal. Please pause the webinar carefully, read through the proposal, and provide an overall assessment. Once you've had an overall assessment, you can go on to the next slide. So, did you accept this proposal? And if so, why? Did you reject the proposal? And if so, why did you reject it? When Robert and I have conducted this session with live audiences, we have received a wide range of responses from full rejection to full acceptance. Very quickly, the audiences realized that without any guidelines or criteria or even a rubric, the evaluations will be very diverse. That is why we invite you to fully participate in this webinar to calibrate your assessment efforts so that they fall closely in line with all the other review members on the team. So let the calibration training begin. Let's move to the learning objectives slide. So there are three objectives here. The first one is to identify key steps of the ADEA program review process. Second is to explain the importance of standardization among reviewers. And third then is to apply selection criteria to review a submission. Robert, take us through the submission review guidelines in the next slide.
So what you'll notice is, depending upon if someone is submitting either an educational abstract or something for poster, tech expo, or corporate, there's different deadlines of when these will be submitted. So typically either June 1st for educational abstracts or September 1 for poster, tech expo, or corporate. Your review will come into play depending upon which you're reviewing, whether it's educational or the others. If you're reviewing educational abstract, you'll be doing your review sometime in the June-July period. If it's for the poster, tech expo, or corporate, you'll be reviewing sometime in September to October. And then after your review process, it will go to the annual session program committee, who will then go through all the abstract submissions from all of your reviews and then determine which abstracts will be accepted, which will not be accepted, and then send out notice of proposal acceptances, either August for educational or for later for the other types. So Dieter, what types of sessions do we have available?
Thanks, Robert. Next slide shows us that there are many types of proposals that ADEA accepts, but the most important ones are the three that require external reviews, which are us, the review team. This includes the new idea session, the educational session, as well as the poster session. In the next slide, you can see that there's an importance of calibration. Just a reminder that our very first proposal presented earlier in this webinar, since there's such a wide range of people responding and evaluating it, we need to be calibrated as reviewers. When it comes to me as an audience member or someone who's submitting a proposal, I want to be guaranteed that my proposal is done well, evaluated in a sense that it's done fairly, equitable, and to some type of standard. And that's why we need to work through this calibration. So we need to judge the quality of conference proposals. We need to help each of us to reduce our biases as reviewers. Sometimes a certain topic that we really resonate with because that's where we're at. We can't just accept it because we like it. We also need to be careful about the biases that we have. We also need to find a more objective assessment way of assessing these proposals. And so these rubrics will be very helpful as we go through them. And the calibration session will help you to align yourself with the rest of the team members. And ADEA can also test for reliability of the reviewing process to ensure that the reviewers are aligned in terms of the reviewing process. And we want to provide the highest quality when it comes to reviews. since the ADEA conference is a highly and prestigious conference to attend, proposals that are accepted are also at the high level, and we want to make sure that calibration at assessing them needs to be at that level as well. So we want to ensure the proposal receives the best assessment possible, and that can only be done through your wonderful efforts and as we calibrate ourselves working together through these next slides here. Over to you, Robert. Take us through the rubric we can use to make these calibrations more successful.
Perfect. Thanks, Dieter. So what you see here is the rubric that will be used by the abstract writers as well as you, the reviewers. So everyone is on the same page as far as what the expectations are for writing and reviewing an excellent abstract. So if you'll notice on criteria, it's going to be judged on different aspects of either content, clarity, format, professional writing, and contribution. And then you'll give a rating of 4, 3, 2, 1, depending upon what the rubric indicates to you the person has done. Have they done an excellent job of following the rubric, or does it need extensive improvement? So it's inherently apparent you must familiarize yourself with the rubric and utilize this as you're going through the review process. So what we're going to do now is go through a few examples and have you, again, pause the program and evaluate some of the different aspects of a presentation. So we'll start off first with our first calibration activity. That's about content. And so what you'll notice here is, remember, look at the criterion, content, and then 4 through. What makes something a 4 versus something that's a 1? So what you have here is a sample abstract. They want you to pause right now, in just a moment, I should say. After you've read through the abstract, judge it on its content. Is it a 4, a 3, maybe a 1? So this will be the first step in your calibration activities. Determine what you think this abstract submission merits as far as calibration on its criterion goes. So next slide. So here's what you're going to do. Go through this. You can stop and pause, go back and forth, but determine, is the content something that you are excited about and merits a 4 versus needing extensive improvement? So you can pause now and evaluate this proposal for content. Next slide. Okay, so after content comes criterion of clarity. All right, and what you'll notice here under excellent, the title, abstract, and learning objectives are clearly described in the session. So we like to tell our reviewers that just even from the start, same thing we tell the abstract writers, what does the title tell you? Does the title tell you something about the abstract or not? Is it clear what the learning objectives are? Versus is it something that is not very clear? So take them a moment, pause now, and go through and evaluate this abstract for its clarity. Next slide. So again, did you give this a 4, 3, 2, or 1, depending upon what you thought the clarity of this process was? Okay, very important aspect is it clear? Next slide.
And Robert, if we may at this point,
yes.
Ask the audience to take a look at what they gave. Our team would have given this a 2, would have been the appropriate value, as there was very minimal information in terms of clarifying the proposal's content. Notice that the title was very vague as well. And so as a result, we as a team would say 2 would probably be a really fair assessment of this proposal.
Perfect. Thank you, Dieter. I should have mentioned that for everyone. So next step under format, you're going to do the same process of reading through the abstract and determining, is this something that demonstrates a high level of interactivity? Especially for our 90-minute formats, 60-minute formats, we expect interactivity. No one wants to come into a session and sit for 90 minutes, 60 minutes hearing someone talk about a process. They want to be engaged, they want to be active. And oftentimes this will be one of those things that gets abstracts not accepted because there was no indication of activity for the participants. So when you read through this next abstract or in the next process, determine what was the format. Did it engage the reader or not? So take a moment, pause, and determine through this where you would rate this process for this one. Next slide. So what did you rate it? Did you think it had a high level of interactivity? Probably not. Most of the people who read through this rated it somewhere between 2 and 3. Some people thought there was at least some activity in there versus others thought there was little interactivity. And this is one of the reasons why we do these rubrics, is because rather than making it just about a subjective opinion, it's trying to get, if you follow the rubric should take you to where there's minimal disagreement between the different reviewers. Between 2 and 3, that's not that much of a disagreement. Whereas if we've got people giving it a 4 and others giving it a 1, that doesn't seem like we've very well calibrated relative to the process. So if you're following the rubric, you should get to where there's minimal differences between our different reviewers. Next slide. So here's the case of professional writing. Is the proposal well written? As Dieter mentioned earlier, are there misspells? Are there grammatical errors? Are there things that when you read it make no sense to you? This is where we try and tell our abstract writers to get different people to read through their submission before they submit it. Multiple eyes benefit everyone. So you're going to take a moment and pause and determine, do you think this is a well-written abstract submission? Is this one that needed some editing? Or is this one that basically needs a total rewrite and is not acceptable in its format? So pause here and go through this little exercise. Next slide. Okay, so again, what did you think? 4 down to 1. Again, I think most of the people in the process who went through this determined, I think we had more 3s than we had 2s on this one. There were definitely some things in there that could have been edited and would have probably been picked up if they had had other people read their abstract during the submission or before the submission process. But it's one that could have used a little bit of work. It's not one that needs a complete rewrite, but definitely could have used some editing to have helped it and would have maybe picked up minor errors if they'd had someone else help them with this process. At least that's what we like to think. Next slide. All right, so contribution. What does this abstract contribute to the meeting? Is this a case of where it's going to be a significant contribution that will attract a lot of people to this? Remember, our membership is broad-based, and we don't want, or it's tough for us to accept abstracts that are very narrow in focus that would only be of interest to very few people at the meeting, versus is this something that a lot of people want to hear about? It's cutting edge, it's innovative, it's new theory or technology. These are the type of things you're trying to get out of the contribution of the abstract. And as you read through it, one of the things you keep in mind is, not just would you want to go see it, but would a significant number of the people attending the meeting want to go? Because you might not have an interest in it, but it's not just about your interest, it's about the membership's interest. So when you judge through this, look at it as it's something that a broad range of people would be interested in and would attend, right? Versus something that has no interest or only a few participants would be able to attend. It's hard to find room for proposals like that because there's so many good proposals out there. So take a couple of minutes, read through this, and determine what you would give this rating-wise. Okay, so next slide. Is this a 4, 3, 2, or 1? For this one, more of our reviewers who've done practice sessions with us have given this a 3 to a 4. If you go back and even look at the title about practice management, it's a case of where it seems like it might have interest to a number of people. You can see where it was written well enough that I think most of our people who have gone through this before have thought that it does make a contribution. It's one that multiple people might have an interest in. And so people vary typically between 3 and 4 on this in the review of this process. So next slide. Okay, so providing a teachable moment. So things that we're going to talk about relative to this. So it's a case of where when you look at this, you're going through and thinking, trying to put yourself, if you will, in the place of the person reading this. So oftentimes we have people who this is their first submission ever to the meeting. Now we hold everyone to the same set of standards, but it's one of those things where we try and keep focusing and kind of harping on, if you will, the rubric. Have people follow the rubric, because even as a first-time novice writer, we hope that if people have followed the rubric, if you're a first-time reviewer, if you follow the rubric, then everybody should be kind of on the same page as far as what the expectations are and where you're going to evaluate this process. So it's a case of where at the end we give feedback. So there's nothing, one of the things our submitters have complained about is the fact that they don't get adequate feedback relative to the process and why the proposal was turned down. So rather than just giving it a score, we ask that you please give feedback that helps the abstract submitter know what could have been improved on their abstract. Sometimes it may just be in the simple thing that there were a lot of different proposals that were submitted on the same topic, and we can only take a few. It might have been a well-written abstract, but it just wasn't as good as some others on the same topic. Versus it may be that it needed things like, somebody else should have helped read this for them because it had grammatical errors, spelling errors, things like, no data present, no IRB review. These are all things that are spelled out in the proposal process, easy to tell about, but we want to try and give as much feedback to the writers as possible. So part of your job and your agreement to doing this, being a reviewer, is that you're going to give feedback such that people know how to improve this process and a better way to do this in the future. Next slide. Okay, so if you look through things like this, here's another abstract. And so this is a case of where you can take yourself through this process and spend a little bit more time on this one. Again, practice determining the different criteria relative to the rubric for the aspects of this abstract. Read through this one, and let's do the same process. Go to the next slide. Pause as you go along the way and determine about content. What did you think about the content of this abstract? Next slide. So 4, 3, 2, 1. How did this abstract compare to the last one? Did you think this is a better written? Was the content of more importance? If you follow the rubric, you're going to determine, is this one that was of relevance? This is something that people would want to go to at the meeting. And I think if you go through this, most of our reviewers gave this one 4, an occasional 3, but most people thought this is a better written abstract than the previous one. Next slide. So again, clarity. Is this one where the title, abstract, and learning objectives are clearly written? Do you understand what you would get if you attended this session? Take a moment, review this one. Next slide. This is an interesting one because if you look at the title, if you look at some things relative to this, the title, mindset research. What is mindset research? Did the abstract writer basically let you know what mindset research was? Is this something that when you read through it, even if you didn't know what it was initially, you read through and thought, oh, this is really interesting. Or maybe you thought, oh, I don't know what this is. I don't understand at all what I would get out of this session. Is it innovative? Is it clearly written? So a lot of things go into this. Our reviewers, again, 4s and 3s on this topic. Some people at first didn't quite understand about the mindset, but as they read through, they became familiar with it and understand what this was about. Next slide. Again, format. Is this something that would get interactivity? Is this something that, basically you just go and you listen to this? What did the abstract writers do to convince you that you would be engaged in participating in this process? So we'll pause here and let you rate it on format. Next slide. Again, 4, 3, 2, 1. Was it interactive or not? So I think what you'll see is when you go through this, they had a clear plan of how they were going to engage the audience. They had a clear plan of things they could do to help participate and get you involved in the process. So this is one that TUI was rated very highly as well. Next slide. Okay, and then professional writing. Was it well written or was it not? You're going to pause and go through this, but do you find misspells, grammatical errors? Is it clearly written? Does it make sense? Did it need any sort of editing? How would you rate this one? Next slide. Almost all of our reviewers practice reviewers gave this a 4. Everyone thought it was well written. There were no grammatical errors. There were no spelling errors. Concise, to the point, succinct, and conveyed what the point of the abstract was. So this was very highly reviewed by those who have done this in the past. Next slide. And then contribution. Will this abstract make a contribution and attract a large number of people? Or is this one that's going to be a little bit more narrow and will only attract a few participants? So let's see what you think about this one. Okay, so this one was a little bit more difficult for some of our viewers to review through and determining if it was going to make a significant contribution and attract a large number of people or not. I think most people who've gone through the process on this one all thought it was a well-written abstract. They all thought it was, the clarity was great, formatting was great, interactivity was good. Some people weren't quite as sure as far as would it get a broad audience or not. Did it only, did you have to be the right type of individual to really want to have or to have an interest in this proposal? So this is one that got anywhere from 4 to 3. There were some people who struggled between even how much of a 3 it was. I think most of us would probably rate this in the 4 to 3 range. It's definitely going to get the people who are interested in new ideas, new ways of doing things, to explore and to investigate. And there's some people who will read through it and think, nope, that's not for me. So that's okay. Every abstract that's going to be accepted in the program won't be for everybody. What you're determining is if you think this fits into the theme of the meeting, if it's a well-written abstract that will have an interest to a broad number of people. Next slide. Okay, so let's go past this one. So I'm going to turn this back over to Dieter, who's going to take you through typical errors that some of our reviewers do and more hints to have a good process with this. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Robert, for taking us through those 2 different calibration activities. We went with one very poor abstract proposal to a very good one. And it shows you the 2 different extremes. We hope that your calibration has aligned to what Robert said our team evaluate each of the 2 different sessions with or proposals. And we also are very delighted that over the many years of reviewing, we've accepted many really good and outstanding proposals. But we've also noticed that during these years that we've had people review them, there's some common errors that reviewers make. These include that we have some people who love to give everyone stickers or giving everyone a good grade. And we need to be critical here. We like to be affirming to people who write proposals, but at the same time, we need to uphold the quality of the type of proposals that we accept. So please use the criteria in each of the rubrics to help you with making the determination whether it's a good proposal or a weak one. Another one that's very difficult for us as we get ready for the preparation for the conference is that we have certain timelines. And if you agree to that, we really appreciate if you can spend the time to complete the review on time, as there's so many things that happen afterwards. We meet as a review committee, an internal review committee, who then take all these reviews, and we always hope that we have at least 3 reviewers for each session or for each proposal. And so if one is missing, it makes it more challenging then to get a good understanding of the rating of the proposal. And the third one is that we have a few reviewers who think that because of their expertise in the area, and that they've done this before, which may be the case, they feel that they're expert enough that they can actually evaluate a session without a rubric. Again, we just encourage people to follow the rubric so that we're all standardized, and so that we can show and demonstrate to the proposal writer and provide them with feedback that is consistent, reliable, and valid. So please use a rubric. And then in summary, we just want to say, first of all, thank you for taking the time to go through this process. Your time is very precious. You have many things to do, but you've opted to take it in this session. So we're very grateful for that. We're also very grateful that you've joined the reviewing team. And we want to hope that this session has helped you to identify the key steps of the ADEA program review process. You've also heard through Robert's two different assignments or proposals, the exercise that followed them, the importance of standardization among reviewers, and then you were able to actually apply it through these different exercises that he gave to you. So if you have any questions about your proposal and reviewing it, please feel free to contact any of the ADEA Annual Session Program Committee members. And on behalf of the Annual Session Program Committee, we thank you for the time to calibrate your efforts to assess the upcoming conference proposals. Robert and I wish you much success as you provide and invest time into this wonderful process. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation.